In the depths of ancient Greek mythology, there exists a creature so terrifying that even today, thousands of years later, her name evokes images of serpentine horror and petrified victims. Medusa, a name that has become synonymous with terror, a monster whose very gaze could turn the bravest hero to stone. But to truly understand Medusa, we must journey back to the ancient world, to a time when myths weren't just stories, but vital explanations of the world itself. And as we'll discover, the true tale of Medusa is far more complex than modern retellings would have you believe. In the earliest Greek sources, Medusa wasn't cursed by anyone. She wasn't transformed. She was born a monster, one of three Gorgon sisters, daughters of the ancient sea deities Perseus and Ceto. These primordial monsters emerged from a world still taking shape, where the line between gods and monsters was often razor thin. Hesiod, writing in the 8th century BCE, describes her in his Theogony. The Gorgons who dwell beyond glorious ocean at the world's edge hard by night, where the clear-voiced Hesperides sing, Steno, Euryale, and Medusa who suffered greatly. Unlike her immortal sisters, Medusa was born mortal. This single detail would shape her entire destiny, making her both vulnerable and invaluable in the ancient Greek imagination. Let's paint the picture of Medusa as the ancient Greeks knew her. Forget the beautiful woman with snakes for hair that later Roman poets would imagine. The original Medusa was terror incarnate. Ancient Greek art depicts her with a broad, grotesque face, wide eyes that seem to bulge with supernatural power, and a mouth stretched in a perpetual grimace, tusks protruding like a wild boar's. Her tongue often lolls out between her fangs, and yes, her hair writhed with living serpents. But these weren't elegant copper coils. They were venomous vipers, each capable of delivering death even if their mistress's gaze somehow missed you. The Greeks gave her a body that combined the worst of their primal fears: scales that no weapon could pierce, brazen claws that could tear through bronze armor, and sometimes even wings that let her pursue those who tried to flee. But it was her eyes that made her legendary. One look, that's all it took. In an instant, living flesh would transform into cold gray stone. Warriors, heroes, innocent travelers, all frozen forever in poses of terror, their final moment of horror preserved for eternity. The ancient sources are clear. Medusa's gaze affected all mortals equally. Man or woman, young or old, hero or villain, none were immune. This wasn't a selective power or a defensive mechanism. It was the raw, chaotic power of a primordial monster. Beyond the edges of the known world, where even the bravest Greek sailors feared to venture, lay the domain of the Gorgons. Ancient sources place their lair in Libya, at the western edge of the world, where the sun sets into darkness. Here, in a landscape of twisted rock, perhaps the petrified remains of unfortunate travelers, Medusa and her immortal sisters made their home. Imagine a cave mouth yawning wide, its entrance adorned with grotesque statues, not carved by any human hand, but the frozen remains of those who dared approach. The ground would have been littered with shed snake skins, the air thick with the musty scent of reptiles and the metallic tang of ancient magic. This was no mere monster's den. This was a place of power, where the boundaries between the mortal world and the realm of monsters grew thin. Here, Medusa reigned as both guardian and prisoner of her own terrible power. Enter Perseus, son of Zeus, and the mortal woman Danae. Unlike later Roman retellings, the Greek version of Perseus wasn't seeking glory. He was manipulated into this quest by King Polydectes, who wanted him dead. The challenge seemed impossible. Bring back the head of Medusa. It was a task that had already claimed countless lives. The landscape around her lair was a garden of stone statues, warriors, heroes, and adventurers who had tried and failed. But Perseus had something no previous hero possessed: divine aid. The goddess Athena, master of strategic warfare, granted him her own polished shield, its bronze surface burnished to mirror brightness. Hermes, the swift messenger god, provided an adamantine sword sharp enough to cut through immortal flesh. He also received winged sandals for swift flight, while Hades himself contributed his helm of invisibility. Finally, they gave him a special kibisis, a magical sack designed to safely contain the severed head. The ancient sources describe Perseus's approach with careful detail. He flew on his winged sandals, using Athena's polished shield as a mirror to navigate. This wasn't just clever tactics. It was the only way to approach a Gorgon. Even a glimpse of Medusa's face in the flesh would mean instant petrification. The moment of confrontation was swift and terrible. Perseus, guided by the reflection in his shield, found Medusa sleeping among her twisted stone garden. Her serpentine hair writhed even in slumber, each snake a deadly guardian. With Hermes' adamantine blade, he struck, severing her head in one clean stroke. But the death of Medusa was only the beginning of the wonder. From her severed neck sprang two beings, Chrysaor, wielding a golden sword, and Pegasus, the immortal winged horse. These were her children by Poseidon, preserved within her until the moment of her death. The Gorgonian became one of the most powerful weapons in Greek mythology. Perseus would wield it multiple times throughout his adventures. He used it to rescue Andromeda, turning the fearsome sea monster Cetus to stone. He later wielded it against King Polydectes and his court, who had plotted against him. The head would prove invaluable in various battles where a terrifying weapon was needed. The terror of Medusa wasn't confined to myth alone. Across the ancient Mediterranean, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of Medusa images, each telling us something about how the Greeks and later cultures viewed this fearsome creature. The earliest known depictions, dating to the 7th century BCE, show us the original Medusa, a terrifying monster with tusks, a broad grimacing face, and snakes not just in her hair, but sometimes sprouting from her body. These early images appear on temple decorations, pottery, and shields, not as art, but as apotropaic symbols, images meant to ward off evil. One of the most famous early examples comes from the Temple of Artemis at Corfu, dated to 580 BCE. The Gorgon pediment, as it's known today, shows Medusa in her most monstrous form, running in the archaic Nilauf position, a pose that suggested supernatural speed and power to ancient viewers. The image of Medusa spread like wildfire across the ancient world, appearing in places both public and private, becoming an enduring symbol of power and protection. In Athens, her face graced coins, a constant reminder of the city's divine guard. Medusa's fearsome gaze also adorned the breastplate of Alexander the Great, offering him strength and an almost supernatural shield. Roman cavalry shields bore her likeness, striking terror into the hearts of enemies. Her presence wasn't just confined to battle, though. Her image could be found on intricate mosaic floors in the villas of the wealthy, where beauty and danger met. Medusa's eyes even watched over doorways and entry points across the Mediterranean, standing guard against evil and misfortune. Each culture that encountered Medusa adapted her image to their own fears and needs. The Etruscans particularly embraced her, placing her image on tombs and funerary objects as a guardian of the dead. As we journey through history, we can trace the fascinating evolution of Medusa's image, reflected in the changing styles of ancient art. In the 7th to 6th century BCE, Medusa was depicted with monstrous, exaggerated features. Her face was twisted with animal-like traits, and the terror she inspired was front and center in every artistic representation. But by the 5th to 4th century BCE, a shift began. Medusa's form became more humanoid, with an increasing focus on the snakes that coiled around her head. Yet even as her features became more human-like, the emphasis on her terrifying power remained, with beauty still nowhere to be found. This transformation speaks to how perceptions of Medusa evolved, from a creature of pure fear to a more complex and sinister figure. In ancient Greek religion, the Gorgonian wasn't simply a decorative motif. It held deep ritual significance. Temples often placed Medusa's image at key points to serve as a powerful guardian. Above doorways, it stood watch, warding off evil from entering sacred spaces. On ritual objects used in ceremonies, the gorgonians symbolized divine protection and strength. In areas where protection was most needed, her face would appear, ensuring the safety of the temple and its inhabitants. One of the most striking examples of this enduring significance can still be seen today at the Temple of Apollo at Didyma, where the weathered faces of Gorgon guardians continue to watch over the ancient sanctuary, standing as protectors for more than 2 millennia. Medusa's image was not just a symbol of terror, it also played a vital role in battle. Archaeological findings reveal the extensive military applications of her likeness. Her face adorned shield bosses, making soldiers' shields even more formidable. Army standards proudly displayed her image, rallying troops and striking fear into enemies. Soldiers also wore protective amulets bearing her face, believing her gaze would shield them from harm. The Romans in particular embraced this military association. The famous Gorgon shield from Nicopolis ad Istrum demonstrates how they adapted her image, incorporating it into their own armies as a symbol of strength and protection. Medusa's face, once a curse, became a weapon of war in the ancient world. One of the most fascinating aspects of Medusa's legacy is how the Greeks connected her to actual stone formations. Several ancient sites were believed to bear the marks of her gaze. The rocky landscape of Seriphos was said to be shaped by her power, with the stones themselves a testament to her curse. In North Africa, unusual stone formations were also attributed to Medusa's gaze, as if her presence had turned the very earth to stone. Even the coral reefs, vibrant and alive beneath the sea, were explained as sea plants that had been petrified by the power of her severed head. These connections between Medusa and the natural world served to reinforce the terrifying and transformative nature of her power, making her myth all the more pervasive. As Greek culture spread through trade and conquest, Medusa's influence extended far beyond Greece, making her presence felt across the ancient world. In Egypt, her image merged with local protective deities, blending her terrifying power with the ancient Egyptian tradition of safeguarding against evil. Medusa's likeness was adapted into Ptolemaic religious art, incorporating her fearsome gaze into the visual language of the time. She also appeared in Alexandrian temple decorations, adding her supernatural strength to spaces of worship. In Asia Minor, Medusa's image was woven into local guardian spirits, offering protection in both public and private spheres. Her face appeared on city coins and monuments, a mark of authority and divine favor. Medusa's presence even found its way into funeral art and architecture, where her gaze served to protect the deceased in the afterlife. As Greek influence spread, so did the enduring power of Medusa, adapting to new cultures while retaining her core symbolism of fear, protection, and the supernatural. What made Medusa's image so compelling that it spread across the ancient world? Archaeological evidence suggests several key factors that contributed to her enduring power. First, there was the universal fear of petrification. Her gaze was a physical manifestation of deep human anxieties, turning living beings to stone with a single look. Then, there was her visual power. With her striking, unforgettable appearance, Medusa became a symbol that carried weight and significance, easily recognizable across cultures. The idea of a protective force also played a major role. Medusa, a monster in her own right, became a guardian against other evils, resonating deeply with societies that sought protection from unseen threats. Finally, her image became a political symbol, conveying power and authority, whether on coins, shields, or monuments. Medusa's face wasn't just a symbol of fear, it was a mark of strength, resilience, and protection, ensuring her place in the ancient world and beyond. As Roman power rose across the Mediterranean, their poets and artists began to reshape Medusa's story. But unlike modern reinterpretations, this wasn't about making her sympathetic. It was about making her more terrifying in new ways. Ovid, writing his Metamorphoses in the 1st century CE, gave us perhaps the most influential description of Medusa's appearance.
Coiled serpents for hair, each scale gleaming like polished bronze, each fang dripping with venom, and eyes that could pierce through flesh and bone, turning the warmth of life to cold, dead stone.
The Romans were particularly fascinated by the moment of Medusa's death, and their artists captured this pivotal scene again and again. On sarcophagi, her death was depicted as a symbol of triumph over mortality, a powerful reminder of the inevitability of death and the victory over it. In grand public mosaics, they portrayed Perseus's victory, immortalizing the moment where the hero defeated the monstrous Gorgon. This scene of Medusa's demise also found its way onto ceremonial armor, where her dying face became a powerful symbol of protection, warding off evil and ensuring victory in battle. The Romans' repeated depiction of Medusa's death speaks to their fascination with both the darker and more triumphant aspects of her myth. But while they loved depicting her death, they also feared her power. Roman soldiers carried her image into battle. Roman ships bore her face on their prows. Even Roman children wore Medusa amulets for protection. What made Medusa so enduring? Why did two of the ancient world's greatest civilizations remain fascinated by her for over 1,000 years? The answer lies in what she represented: power that couldn't be controlled. In a world where gods could be bargained with and heroes could overcome most monsters, Medusa remained absolute. One look, that's all it took. No strength, no cleverness, no divine parentage could protect you from her gaze. As the ancient world transformed into the medieval period, Medusa's image continued to evolve, maintaining a powerful presence when many other ancient monsters faded into obscurity. In Byzantine church decorations, her face was prominently displayed, where it served to ward off evil and protect sacred spaces. In medieval bestiaries, Medusa was reimagined as a representation of deadly sin, embodying the dangers of wrath and excess. Her image also found a place in Islamic art, where it was adapted into intricate protective patterns, woven into the design of textiles, tiles, and architecture. Medusa's legacy, far from being confined to the ancient world, lived on, continuously reinvented to reflect changing cultural values while retaining her core symbolism of power, protection, and danger. Even today, archaeologists continue to uncover new evidence of Medusa's ancient power, shedding light on her enduring influence. Recent findings have revealed previously unknown temple decorations in Turkey, where her image continues to serve as a protective force. In buried Roman villa mosaics in North Africa, Medusa's face has been discovered once again, reinforcing her presence in private spaces meant to ward off evil. Archaeologists have even unearthed treasure hoards containing jewelry decorated with her likeness, further highlighting her role as both a symbol of power and protection. These ongoing discoveries remind us that Medusa's legacy stretches far beyond myth, leaving an indelible mark on the ancient world. Each discovery tells us more about how the ancients viewed this complex figure, not as a victim, not as a misunderstood woman, but as a primal force of nature itself. Medusa's uniqueness among ancient monsters lies in the sheer nature of her power. Unlike the Minotaur, she couldn't be defeated through mere strength. Unlike the Sphinx, she couldn't be outsmarted with riddles. Unlike the Hydra, she couldn't be overcome through persistence. And unlike the sea monsters, she couldn't be appeased with sacrifice. Medusa's power was absolute, instantaneous, and permanent. One look, that's all it took. No second chances, no heroic last stands. Just eternal silence in stone. Her gaze transformed everything it touched into something immovable, forever frozen in time. In a world of monsters who could be defeated or tricked, Medusa's curse stood as a reminder of the inescapable power of fate itself. The physical evidence of Medusa's profound impact on the ancient world is overwhelming. Over 300 ancient Greek vases bear her image, each piece a testament to her power and presence. More than 200 Roman temple decorations showcase her face, symbolizing both protection and terror. Thousands of protective amulets and coins have been unearthed, each one carrying the weight of her gaze. Across 3 continents, countless architectural elements, from doorways to columns, feature her likeness, ensuring that her influence stretched far and wide. As we conclude our journey through the true story of Medusa, we must acknowledge something important. The ancients were right. She is immortal in a way. Her image still holds power, her story still captivates, her gaze still turns people to stone, if only metaphorically, stopping them in their tracks when they encounter her ancient visage. The real Medusa, the Medusa of ancient Greece, wasn't a victim seeking redemption. She wasn't a misunderstood figure waiting for modern interpretation. She was something far more powerful, a reminder that in this universe there are forces beyond human control or understanding. The Greeks understood something we often forget. Some powers aren't meant to be controlled. Some forces aren't meant to be tamed. Medusa represented this truth in its purest form, the reality that some things in this world are simply beyond our ability to master. Today, when archaeologists uncover a new Medusa image at an ancient site, they're touching a connection that spans millennia. Each discovery tells us more about how our ancestors viewed power, fear, and the untamable forces of nature. The next time you see Medusa's image, remember, you're not just looking at a monster from an ancient story. You're looking at one of humanity's oldest and most powerful symbols of unstoppable force. A reminder that some powers remain beyond our control, some forces beyond our understanding. And perhaps in a world where we increasingly believe we can control everything around us, that's a lesson worth remembering. What aspects of Medusa's true story surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the real stories behind ancient myths.